So let me just say hello to everyone and welcome to Get Connected. For those of you who are not familiar with Get Connected, we are the premier multicultural, or I like to say inclusive, business networking event series. For those of you who have participated, you know that when we are in person, and you walk into a Get Connected event, it truly looks like the new inclusive Boston. It's everyone has a seat at the table and space in the room, and we celebrate, document, amplify, and elevate diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I want to thank you all for being here. I want to specifically thank our partners in crime, and that's BECMA, the Black Economic Council of Massachusetts. They are an affinity partner of Get Connected. Proud to say that we collaborate with them on several other events. Their founding director was one of our honorees, one of the 25 most influential millennials back in 2018. And the current director and president, Nicole Obi, who is not here today, but ably represented by Jamie Washington, is one of our 2021 most impactful Black women in Boston. And so if you see this space here, everybody on this, your screen was selected intentionally and deliberately because they're all individuals who are contributing to the economic, social, media, and entrepreneurship, hospitality, innovation that's happening in our great city. And so I just want to say that we are also proud of our partnership with NBC 10. And I will hand it off later to Glenn Jones, who I found out is a member of my alma mater, Emerson College. So we are, you know, college twins of a different era, of course. And of course, there is also PNC Bank, which is, I have to say that they have been phenomenal. They are our presenting sponsor of today and for this entire year of Get Connected. And very strong allyship from their president of New England, John Bernstein, and certainly Saskia Epstein and Danielle Pinson, who is here today representing them. And I just want to say that between the two pandemics of COVID-19 and the systemic racial inequity, between February and April, I would say February to April 2020, that Black business ownership declined by 40% in the United States, the single largest drop across any ethnic group, according to the House Committee on Small Businesses. The report details how Black businesses are less likely to really get the kind of support and money and everything that they need to survive and thrive. And yet, we thought that this would be a wonderful time to celebrate the brilliance and the resilience of Black businesses, particularly in Boston. And everyone here has done phenomenal things. And we wanted to elevate, amplify, and showcase them. and to hear from them how they did it. And I'm proud of my dear friend Herbie Duvernay, who is the CEO of Windwalker. But Herbie, again, started a business during the pandemic to really spotlight equity and inclusion in the real estate and development market, Rise Together. And Jada Turner, who is one of the grantees of the GK Fund, which was founded by myself and Michael Benezera and Andre Porter, specifically to support the next gen entrepreneurs of color in general, Black entrepreneurs in particular, and women. And we are proud of that and proud of the work that Jada is doing. Nia Grace, I mean, she sprung into action after the pandemic, creating the Boston Black Coalition, Hospitality Coalition, to bring together Black entrepreneurs who were in the ecosystem of the hospitality, beverage, and food industry. And she, in the middle of it, also launched a new business. And so she has a lot to share. BECMA was at the forefront of ensuring that Black businesses thrived, survived, and able to move their businesses to the next level. And so I wanted to also thank them for partnering with us. Danielle Pinson is in community relations and community affairs and community engagement for our terrific presenting partners. They put up 1.8, not 100, $1.8 billion to help Black-owned businesses and Black companies and organizations. And NBC 10 has been at the forefront of really supporting our community at large with their coverage. They're a partner, media partner of Get Konnected, and have done a phenomenal job. Their parent company, Comcast, helped over 6,700 businesses across the country, including Colette Phillips Communications, my company, and my partner on All Inclusive Boston Proverb are the beneficiaries of their generosity. So if you saw us on CNN and on NBC, MSNBC, that was Comcast and NBC 10. And of course, we have Helena Ajakai, who is the fabulous Executive Vice President at the Greater Boston Convention and Visitors Bureau, my partner on the All-Inclusive Boston, and they too have done a phenomenal job of doing business with BIPOC companies in general, but Black business specifically and particularly. And I want to just commend all of them. And my partner here in crime, Michael Benezera, who is our COO and also the executive director of the GK Fund that we founded together to really give Black businesses what I call the 3 M's: money, mentorship, and marketing, to help elevate them. And without further ado, I would love very much to introduce you to the fabulous Glenn Jones. We are so thrilled to have him back here in Boston, and certainly as the anchor for NBC 10. And he told me this was a command performance, but I don't believe him, right? I know he wanted to do this because any opportunity to elevate people like yourselves, Glenn is really about storytelling. And I know that this rings through for him. So thank you, Glenn, for being here. Mark Goodman, your colleague from Comcast, wanted to be here, but unfortunately couldn't be. And, this is wonderful because you get to represent your parent company on this. So thank you.
My pleasure, Colette. Thank you very much for that introduction. It is my privilege to be here representing our brand, but also a representative of our community. I have to tell you that since returning to Boston, this is my second tour of duty in Boston. I lived here 15 years ago. And on this return, the Boston community has been very embracing to me. And I think that's especially been true from the Black community. So I'm deeply grateful for that. And it is one of the reasons very much that I wanted to be here today. In between those tours of duty, I worked as a public communications strategist and as a destination marketing executive. And I have to tell you, one of my proudest professional moments is working in destination marketing and helping Black-owned small businesses raise their profile in the tourism economy so that people who are visiting Bermuda can intentionally seek out Black-owned businesses. And on a personal level, I should also mention, I hope this resonates with Nia, when I was a college student in Boston, whenever someone was taking me out to dinner, like family or friends for a special occasion, I would go to Bob the chef so that I could stick them with the bill. I couldn't eat there on my own all the time as a college student, but whenever somebody else was gonna pay, that's where we were going. And so I am delighted about the legacy that you're continuing with that great Boston landmark. So for all of those reasons, I am very, very grateful to be here. This is gonna be an exciting conversation. So if you've just joined us, welcome to Get Connected's forum, From Adversity to Opportunity, How Black Businesses Pivoted and Thrived During the Pandemic. You can see the august panel that we have lined up here. Colette mentioned most of them a moment ago. But we're gonna start this conversation with Danielle Pinson. She is the Client and Community Relations Specialist at PNC Bank. She is also PNC Certified Women's Business Advocate. She's a graduate of Suffolk University, where she received her bachelor's degree and master's degree in government and public administration, respectively. She serves on multiple nonprofit boards across Greater Boston. And in today's event, PNC is a major racial equity partner of Get Konnected for 2022, excuse me. And we could not be more delighted to have her here today and ask her to start off this conversation with some remarks.
Thank you so much, Glenn. And thank you to Colette and the entire GK team for having me. We're just thrilled to support Get Konnected and this event. As Glenn said, and Colette, my name is Danielle Pinson. I'm the Client and Community Relations Specialist here at PNC. And I'm actually here filling in for my colleague Saskia Epstein, who's traveling today and sorry she had to miss out on the conversation. We have an astounding panel of esteemed business and community leaders, including many who PNC is proud to support. I'm sure the panelists will share how they've navigated the many challenges of the pandemic, as well as the creative ways in which they were able to sustain and scale their own businesses while helping to lift many others. At PNC, we know that Black businesses have faced multiple barriers to access the resources necessary to grow and sustain. And that's why we're proud to support Get Konnected, as well as BECMA and many others. We know that Black business ownership is vital to economic mobility in Black communities. So that's why we're especially excited to support Get Konnected in this initiative with our partnership throughout the year. I'm eager to hear from everybody else, so I will pass it back over to you, Glenn, and just so excited to hear from this panel today.
Danielle, thank you very much. You'll have to let your colleague know she missed out on a good time because we're about to have one here today. All right, let's go next to Jamie Washington. She's the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer at BECMA. That's a Black Economic Council of Massachusetts. BECMA is a co-sponsor of today's event. Jamie is also president and CEO of the award-winning and forward-thinking digital marketing company, Washtone Media. She went to Berklee College of Music and graduated with a bachelor's in songwriting and vocal performance, and will be singing all of her contributions today during this panel. No, I'm just kidding. You don't have to sing. So we know about BECMA's mission, Jamie. So I guess I just wanted to hear from you, what are you expecting to see emerge from this pandemic in terms of Black businesses? I know it has been a trial by fire for them, so I'm sure there have been some difficult stories that all of them have lived through. But what lessons were learned from that, and what does the future look like?
Well, Glenn, thank you so much for having me. And I want to say thank you to Ms. Colette Phillips. I am so grateful to be here. I am also filling in, like Danielle said, I'm filling in for my president and CEO, Nicole Obi at BECMA. She was not able to be here, but I'm glad to be here. So here's the situation. Black organizations have been supporting a community that was already under-supported on all fronts, from health, safety, housing, education, business opportunities, and support. The pandemic was a crisis for everyone, but our community was most vulnerable and lacked the safety net needed to survive. 40% of Black-owned restaurants. We were just talking about, Glenn, you just mentioned a restaurant that you love to visit. 40% were closed inside of the pandemic. Black students have been disproportionately been affected due to broadband and technology gaps. We've heard stories of children not being able to get online because they didn't have access to internet at their homes to get the proper education that they so deserve and need. Black workers on the front lines are forced to make choices between employment, or do I need childcare, safe childcare? Do I leave my child at home, or do I go to work? So I think two lessons have been learned. We can't roll from crisis to crisis. We have to address systemic racism head on. We need policies focused on ensuring transparency and equity in both private and the public sectors to remove long-standing barriers. And as an organization like BECMA, we are stronger when we work together beyond the crisis. When we do, we can support the Massachusetts Black economic. And we feel that this would bring us a full potential of doing good.
Thank you, Jamie. So I do have a question that I'm almost afraid to ask because I'm worried about the answer here. But if we lost 40% of Black-owned businesses through the pandemic, I assume there is a percentage that survived that only survived barely.
Yes.
Are they going to be able to make it?
If we don't get the funding to help support them, I'm sad to say, Glenn, I don't believe that they will make it. The bills are astronomical. I mean, some of the business owners, BECMA members that are restaurateurs, they call us on a daily basis and say, what was $40 a pound for, let's just say, prime rib of what they needed to purchase at wholesale, now it's $260 per pound. If we don't come together and help them, no, Glenn, I'm sad to say, I don't believe they will make it.
All right, Jamie, thank you for those hard truths. Let's go to Jada Turner now. She is on our panel and is the founder and managing director of Black-Owned Boss. Its mission is to create digital and physical space for Black businesses. She's a graduate of Northeastern University. So Jada, based on what we just heard from Jamie, what does your brand aim to do to assist the business segment that we've been speaking about?
For sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Like Lynn mentioned, my name is Jada Turner, founder and managing director of Black-Owned Boss. Thank you all for having me on this panel today. I'm excited to just kind of share with one another. So what Black-Owned Boss does is really a kind of community-centered focused approach to business. As an entrepreneur myself, before even starting this business, I understand how lonely it can be, how kind of you need that connection to make your brand stand out, how to scale, how to grow. And as I was starting out with Black-owned Boss, it was really just kind of like a side hobby, creative expression, etc. Having an opportunity to show the Black-owned businesses that I know and love just from growing up in Boston. But with the pandemic and how it hit businesses hard, but then also kind of that captive audience. There were a lot of people that were paying attention to Black-owned businesses. A lot of people were paying attention to small businesses, kind of finding those tangible ways on a personal level, how you can impact the movement that was going on. So that with that captive audience, it just felt like a moment that Black-owned Boss kind of needed to rise to the occasion to capture dollars, capture visibility, capture opportunities. And with this kind of community-centered focus on business, a lot of people will come to Black-owned Boss with opportunities around how can we connect with your membership? How can we provide opportunities? How can we make an impact? And being able to have that captive audience, whether it's individuals or corporations, being able to be kind of a funnel for those opportunities, project manager for those opportunities, kind of at large, has been really impactful. I think we have a responsibility as Black-owned Boss, even if we are a for-profit business. A lot of people don't realize that we are, just because it is mission-driven work, and it's really important work that needs to be done. But we are generating revenue, one for the business, but also for others. We actually just hit an amazing milestone recently around generating $1 million in incremental revenue for Black-owned businesses within our network over the last 18 months. So if Black-owned Boss did not exist, those businesses would not have that incremental revenue. And we just see that as a kind of milestone around creating opportunity in this community-focused space. Even if you are a business that sells candles, sells food, there's still work to be done around building community with one another.
So through the pandemic, Jada, did you find that people were seeking out the kind of service that you provide to help their business? I ask that because I know history has taught me that when businesses face financial stress, sometimes they feel as if marketing is the one expense that they can eliminate, to make rent. And I understand the logic, but sometimes that's self-defeating.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And that was kind of one of the pivots around what was the true mission of what I wanted the business to be. Were our customers really Black-owned businesses, or were they institutions, municipalities, et cetera, that needed to diversify their portfolio, or individuals that needed a place to diversify their spending? And that's really where we pivoted, because the opportunity is not really with serving Black-owned businesses as our core customer. They're the beneficiaries of the work that we do, which is how we wanted to maintain that. But the dollars and cents, what really matters, the power, the influence, those are at a different level when you're talking about institutions, you're talking about corporations that are coming together and that have the funds to create these opportunities. So when it comes to kind of one-on-one consulting or promotional opportunities specifically for businesses, those were things that we kind of had to pivot away from to create more opportunities for businesses to have impact, whether it's creating sales opportunities, whether it's consulting on a project to bring more Black-owned businesses to a market, whether it's to diversify somebody's kind of procurement approach or program management within that. That was really where the impact was.
Okay, Jada, thank you. So we've got 2 fire contributions so far. Let's go next to Helena Ajakaye, who is the Vice President of the Greater Boston Convention and Visitors Bureau, one of the subcontractors for the All-Inclusive Boston campaign, which I have enjoyed reviewing. So excellent work that you guys did there. Helena played a key role in the campaign's focus on highlighting Black businesses in Boston. She did her undergraduate work at the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth, where she graduated with a bachelor's degree in communications and English. She attended Northeastern University for an MBA in international marketing management. So Helena, welcome. Let's start just by talking with you about the lessons you believe the city's Board of Tourism sector learned through the ebbs and flows of the pandemic. It was obviously an incredibly stressful time. But that time is not in vain if things were learned. So what do you think was picked up?
Thank you so much, Glenn, and thank you to Colette, Get Konnected, and the entire team for having me here today and having this opportunity to be in conversation with these phenomenal leaders on the screen. So happy to be here. And Glenn, I think that such a great pivot from Jada's last comment and your comment around the power of marketing and storytelling. So for the Greater Boston Convention and Visitors Bureau, we are the primary private sector that tells stories through marketing, right? We market the destination to the world, to the domestic and the international world. And we're charged with enhancing the economy of Boston. And so through the pandemic, I think you asked what 3 lessons were learned. I can probably give you a dozen, but we learned a lot. So the biggest lesson that we knew that we learned that others may not have known is that we certainly could not take the tourism and hospitality industry for granted, right? We learned that the resources that we have for our members, we have over 904 member organizations that depend on our advocacy, our marketing, our ability to tell their stories, both internal to our city, but external to the country and then the world so that people can come and visit and fuel our economy. And so we've always been, fiercely focused on telling that story. The CVB is a 45-year-old legacy organization, but, there's never been a time where the call to action has been extremely at the forefront of doing it very intentionally. So while we've always focused on that, we found ourselves working with policymakers, state and local and government and city officials, really educating everyone. What does this industry really do for the economy of Boston? With our members, I think that, most of you can talk to this, that you're on here. There were a lot of policy changes and we needed to kind of disseminate that information out to all of you so that we were in compliance, whether you're a hotel, a restaurant, a small business. We had to be that conduit and we were proud to take that. So when I dive into the numbers, the lessons learned, we had to learn that the hospitality industry within our state employed over 376,000 workers. So that's big, right? That's the third. 1 in 10 resident in Massachusetts works in the hospitality industry. And then that generated, and that, pre-pandemic, over 28 billion in economic output just on its own. And then further, when you look at the fact that its spending and activities and other revenues generated 232,000 jobs. And so when those are gone, that strains our industry. So we learned that we needed to have that education go out. And then for the industry, one of the most, resilient times were in 2001 and 2008, where the economy was disrupted, and we recovered from that. So we're hopeful that that's going to happen again. But despite that, I think that the industry still faces challenges around retaining talent, around hiring a workforce that is here to stay. Post-pandemic, we still have over 2 million women out of work and 1.6 million men. So when you think about the hospitality industry needing employees, that's important. And then, just getting back into the economic output of this sector, our taxes, our wages are dependent on it. And I'll get into the last part of your question that I know you're kind of, what's recovering next or what's behind, is that we know leisure is definitely a strong part of where we are right now, but it's really just educating everyone that, tourism, hospitality is a huge part of our economy here in the city and supporting small businesses. I'm looking at my screen right now. Nia is a member of the CVB, so is Jada, so is Herbie. BECMA has been a huge supporter of us looking at our, member proposition, working with small businesses in our 23 neighborhoods and being a conduit to that. And then, of course, working with Colette on All-Inclusive Boston as the lead agency and really having us look at Boston as an inclusive place. So I'll stop there and pause a bit for the phone.
Alina, thank you very much. I should remind those who are sort of our spectators in this conversation that we don't only want you to be spectators. You can use the chat feature to leave a question and we'll try to get to those questions at the end of this discussion. And if you prefer, just leave a comment based on something that you've heard. We're happy to hear that as well, and that'll get a dialogue going in the chat section. All right, so let's go on to another speaker next, and that will be Herbie Duvernay, the CEO of Windwalker Group and founder and CEO of Rise Together. Both are based in Charlestown. Windwalker Group has 25 years of experience helping customers with physical and cybersecurity solutions that protect and prepare them for growth and for thriving. Herbie has a bachelor's degree and a master's degree, both in criminal justice from Northeastern University. Herbie, it's great to have you here, especially because I've read in the notes that not only did you manage and pivot a business during the pandemic, but you started a new one. So please tell us what was happening in your mind that made you feel as if that was the right time to start up. Oh, Herbie, we got you muted. Just need to unmute you there.
Thank you, Glenn. And first and foremost, thank you, Colette, for the invitation. So of course, whenever Colette asks us to do those kind of event, count me in, Colette. You know, I'm always going to be saying yes, because this is important to share our stories and so forth. It's interesting because I think, Glenn, one of the things that I truly believe is the fact that Black people in America and also many other states, many other countries, we're very resilient. So we don't stop. You know, that's why we will never stop, regardless. It is a 1 month from Black History Month or the whole year. We always keep pushing and try to do how we can do better. So I've been talking a lot about building wealth, and not just building wealth for myself, but building wealth for the community. So over the years, one of my best friend and good friend, who's a partner of mine, Jim Grossman, who actually used to happen to be a client of mine, the organization that he worked for at the time, he was one of the mentor, one of the person to make sure that I navigate through that big organization that he was a part of. But we always talk about investing in opportunity. We always talk about how we can make sure that we grow our own wealth, but also ensuring that other people, we bring in other people into the game. So that's how I started Rise Together. Again, Rise Together actually means something. Basically, it's an organization where we want to ensure that more of us, not just the developers, not just the owners, not just the partners of the firm, more of us participate in the opportunity and build wealth as well. And we've been around for over 3 years now. So we start the conversation many more than 3 years, but during the pandemic, we really have to push and make sure that we are doing the things that we need to do. So thus far, we have a lot of development opportunities going on, not just in Boston, but also places in Malden, Medford, and other places where we want to make sure that in every community that we have, we make that community as inclusive as possible. When I mean inclusive, I mean not just having a location where only the wealthier can buy houses, but I have a location where that can be connected with everybody. So not only people with we can have affordable housing, affordable home ownership. Also the people that can pay for those for high price can be there, all of us, but also connected opportunity transportation, but also at the same time ensuring that everybody participate in that opportunity. Because I think that development is one of the way you can do that. It's not a lot of businesses that way you can have where you can bring others to make sure that they participate in the wealth with you. In my company, it's been around 10 years. In most companies, usually the CEO, the owners of the company get all the wealth. But in development, you can ensure that more people participate, whether you're a developer or not. All I have to do is give you a call and know when there's an opportunity coming up, and then you can make your money 2, 4, 10, 12 times what you invested in. So that's sort of one of the reasons we wanted to do that. And that's why we started the company, and that's why we pushed forward during the pandemic.
Okay, Herbie, thank you. I have actually so many more questions for you based on what you just said, but I don't want to take all the time away from asking questions from the audience. So I'm going to come back if we have time,
Sure.
But for now, I'm going to go to Nia, who I'm really anxious to hear speak today after I told you my story about Bob the Chefs. Nia Grace is the proprietor of Daryl's Corner Kitchen and Bar in the South End. It is the spot for soul food and Southern hospitality in Boston. In fact, that physical piece of real estate has been the place to go if you're hungry. Nia is also the founder of Boston's Black Hospitality Coalition. She earned her bachelor's degree in criminology from the University of Miami. Restaurant ownership is a long way from criminology, Nia, so you're going to have to explain that journey, but also tell us the journey over the last couple of years here, where you've opened a new place called Underground, which is a restaurant on the campus of Northeastern University, not very far from where you're doing business now. That must have taken some courage to do, not only because the audiences are so different, right? But because we were all going through a stressful time.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you. Most of my friends here. Thanks for Colette for the invitation. Definitely happy to share my story. Kind of touching on that first part, how did I end up here? I did study criminology, but one of the core pieces of, I think, my entire being is about being able to contribute to my community. I'm from Roxbury, Dorchester, born and raised, went to the University of Miami. And it's kind of one of those things that you go away to kind of bring back your talents to your neighborhood so that you can lift it up. So when I returned home, I'm so sorry, I'm in my office. So when I returned home after, kind of having that experience, I wanted to figure out how I could contribute to the marketplace. And the first thing I did, I actually worked in a nonprofit space. I worked in a nonprofit that focused on human services. Then I worked at one that focused on community development and, in fact, empowering underserved community with a voice. And so from that point, though, I had always had this kind of hospitality bug. When I was at the University of Miami, I managed my campus restaurant, did a lot of different promotions. So, your Super Bowl Sunday, we were running a promotion. If there was a party with the Greeks, we were doing that. And it's kind of always been my thing to welcome people home. But when I got back again to Boston, working my, typical corporate job or my traditional corporate job, I needed my third space. I, in fact, had not been so privileged to be a regular customer of the infamous Bob the Chef, but my family had. It was later, in fact, after ownership, that I found out my grandmother, in fact, lived upstairs from Bob. And then I knew that, my parents had dined here, my brother had dined here, and some even had worked here. Again, that was all before anything that I really knew. But what I knew when I walked in the doors 12 years ago, when it was Daryl's Corner Bar and Kitchen, is that I felt at home. And I felt at home in a city where I thought, just my neighborhood was really my home. I was, in fact, super impressed to look up and see the marquee that had a gentleman's name named Daryl on it. And I knew Daryl looked like me, and when I walked in, I could tell that he had created that space for us to feel comfortable in a neighborhood that, in fact, had changed a lot. And I had said kind of off the cuff to my friend, I said, listen, if I ever own a place, and literally had no idea that I wanted to really even be in this space in that way. But I said, if I ever owned a location, that I would want it to be just like this. I love the music, the art, the familiar smells. Like I said, it was a space that was really special to me, and I had no idea how we would come full circle. And so to that end, when I finished my stint at Boston Neighborhood Network, I decided to take my 12 years of experience and kind of use it to help build small businesses, something like Jada, but, she's doing a much more phenomenal job with me. But I wanted to, take my skills at business management and development and even social media marketing, which was fairly new, back then, to help these smaller businesses that I thought needed a larger platform. And so that's how I made my way to Daryl's. I first came here as a consultant. They understood my background in management as well as restaurants, and they had an opening for manager position. I took that role as well. And after 2 years' time, having managed the space and then becoming the general manager, I left. And I actually was really in my space of trying to figure out what could I do? How could I get this done myself? Like I finally felt that I had the knowledge and information to getting to an industry here in the city of Boston, which in fact had seemed for the very best part really cloaked in kind of mystery on how to obtain something that was really valuable. And in this way, it's not the restaurant portion, it was the liquor license. I had finally felt encouraged enough to figure it out. And in 2018, I talked to Daryl. I let him know that I was looking for a location. And he called me and said, hey, if you're really looking for a location, let's talk about Daryl's. He had admired my work here, and he knew that I really loved the space, and not having had a whole lot of traditional training or experience. He knew that I was a fairly good caretaker for it. And, that's kind of how I made it here. To your question about what made me be courageous and try another venture, when most African-American restaurants or owners, typically they fail within the first 18 months. 18 months, I was here in ownership, and 18 months later, we were able to open the underground. And it definitely was a matter of really trying to be fearless, really stepping outside of my comfort zone, really saying, you know what, if this is an opportunity, now might be the only time that I have to take it. And really trusting in, the people on the screen, the Inclusive Boston campaign, the Colette Phillips, who are like, whenever I see somebody, I'm gonna make sure I mention you. It's literally trusting the faces that were a part of our community that said, we're not going to let you fail. And I'm showing up to the table every day to hopefully not fail. So that partnership, I also say, or the reason why I did it was that the partnership felt right. It was a landlord who said, you know what, now's the time. Well, it's been the time for a while. And so I'm really, I see something in you, and that's it. It's them taking a chance on me, and me taking a chance even with them. That kind of got us there.
Wow, Nia, all the words, seriously. I am pre-ordering the book, so I hope you're writing it. That is an incredible story. Okay, let's go to the one face you haven't heard from here on the screen yet today, and that's Michael Benezera. He is the co-founder of the GK Fund. He's the executive director of the GK Fund, a social impact fund founded here in Boston in the shadow of the murder of George Floyd and the racial reckoning that stunned the world in its wake. Colette Phillips and Andre Porter are also co-founders of the GK Fund. Michael has an undergraduate degree in social sciences from the University of Washington and a Master of Arts in Government from Harvard University. Michael, welcome. Let us know a little bit more about the GK Fund, what its mission is, how it's funded, and how it distributes funds to those who are worthy.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. So the GK Fund is a 501c3 nonprofit. It aims to close the racial wealth gap by facilitating access to capital, mentorship, and marketing, like Colette said, for Black-owned startups primarily. Colette, Andre, and I actually started the fund in December of 2019. Perfect timing. And we had a decision to make. Do we move forward, during the pandemic, or do we accelerate forward? Do we stop? And we chose to accelerate forward. Colette brought me on as our COO and executive director of the fund. I helped Colette lead the all-inclusive campaign as well. We didn't walk, we ran to get incorporated. We built a board, we raised money, we secured a 501c3, we created an application process, we built a website, we hired attorneys, and finally we issued grants to Black-owned companies. In that time, we raised over $700,000, including $100,000 from the state, the Bar Foundation, and PNC Bank. And proudly, all of our funding, 100% of it went to Black-owned companies. Jada's company, Black-owned Boss, included. We also built and leveraged partnerships with firms, tech companies, banks, and made $2 million worth of loan capital available to these companies. And we went through a rigorous process of creating a criteria to evaluate these companies. Our application takes 7 minutes. It does not place an undue burden on the company, like a lot of others do. And this actually delivered the best companies to the top. One example I like to cite is that we never asked any of the founders for their education status. Yet 100% of our grantees have bachelor's degrees and 60% have master's degrees, including Jada on this call. Yesterday, we released a letter to the BBJ reaffirming our commitment. I will say BECMA played a critical role during the pandemic by distributing a lot of the government grant funding. And GK Fund tried to and continues to, issue a lot of privately funded grant funding. So it's been a whirlwind. It's been hard. It's been very fulfilling and rewarding. There are so many entrepreneurs and small businesses out there that deserve the funding, need the funding, and can do a lot with it. So, we hope people will continue to contribute and also work with our companies. And that's,
you're
the
you're the perfect bookend, though, to what Jamie was talking about at the beginning, because she talked about that need for the community to kind of help solve this problem. And I think that's exactly what this fund does. Jamie, in fact, there's a question for you in the chat. It's just about the rising costs that you talked about, which is putting a lot of pressure on small businesses. Do you think, is there any discussion about legislation that will help cap those costs, or any kind of price control mechanisms that might help cap costs? That's what's being asked in the forum. Of course, inflation is something all of us are facing, but it's especially tough for small businesses.
Yes. Oh, wow. What a great question. I'll say this. Oh, boy, it will be as soon as I get off this phone call and I get with my colleagues at BECMA. Price control is a restriction that has to be enforced by the government. Usually around wars, there's price control. But maybe if we, maybe if we could come up with something similar to rent control, where it's a minimum price, of the pricing floor, and then there's a maximum. But I think about, Glenn, we have to work together as a community, and we have to speak up. A lot of times, BECMA, we don't hear about these things until it's too late. For example, 50 Kitchen just closed their doors on February the 12th. Chef Caldwell, he did not receive any PPP money whatsoever. He only received a $75,000 grant on the local level. He received no funding in the federal level, and he applied, but he didn't receive anything. Whereas we have Rebecca's Cafe that got about 2.7 million, and Not Your Average Joe's got about 5.9 million. It's just not fair, and the proportions is disappropriate. So when you look at these systemic issues, and then they get upset when people like BECMA, when we come out and we're saying this is systemic racism. So I want to say this: speak up. If you have a problem, contact us over at BECMA. If you have a problem and you don't know how to get in contact with someone, reach out to Ms. Colette. Send an Instagram DM to Glenn Jones. Speak up so that we can know what the problem is and we can help it. But Glenn, that's a great question, whoever asked it in the chat. And we're going to see what we can do, because I'm sure it's not just 2 or 3 restaurants that are complaining about the cost of goods being too much for them to even pay rent. Like, they're having to decide, do I pay rent for my restaurant, or do I pay for the goods that I need to serve? It's terrible situation.
Yeah.
Glenn, if I could just jump in here, I just want to say that one of the important lessons that I hope people will take away from this is the power of connection and collaboration. This is a collaborative effort. You have NBC, you have the CVB, you have NEAR, you have JADA, you have BECMA and PNC, the GK Fund. The important thing is, last year we collaborated with NEAR, the Boston Black Hospitality Coalition. The CVB was our lead corporate and partner on this. And BECMA, we actually put together the Taste of Ethnic Boston, with NBC 10 being the media partner on it, to really elevate and amplify neighborhood restaurants and the ecosystem of hospitality, culinary, and beverage in our city, primarily spotlighting ethnic and BIPOC-owned businesses. I am saddened that 50 Kitchen went out of business because they were one of the companies we spotlighted in the all-inclusive campaign. And because of the generosity of our donors, the GK Fund actually gave a grant to each restaurant that participated, because we knew these restaurants had been closed for several months and was making no money, and they were willing to come and give food literally for free. And we felt it was very important to partner and to give a percentage of the monies raised at this event to Near's group, and to also make a contribution to her group to support the work that she was doing. So I want to really encourage all of us on this call to think collaboratively, because no one person is going to close the wealth gap. No one person or organization can stop systemic inequality and structural racism. But if we come together, and I'm proud to say on this call, I noticed that we had one of our board members, Evelyn Murphy, the former Lieutenant Governor of Massachusetts, a historic and pioneering figure herself, on this call. She has been a mentor of mine for 30 years. And as a business owner, that to me is phenomenal. Herbie is a board member. And, I just want to really promote collaboration and partnership. I also saw Mary Jo Meisner, who has been an advisor to Get Konnected and the GK Fund on this call. So I want to give them a shout out. They are white allies. So Black people can't do it alone. I know everybody's looking and said, there is Michael, the white guy. What's the white guy doing on the Black business celebration? Well,
My wife says the same thing.
This white guy
Okay.
can jump. This white guy is a great ally and a very, very, very good advocate for BIPOC and Black-owned business. If he wasn't, he couldn't be a part of anything that I'm personally involved with, because I want to engage people, and I feel like we don't need to carry the world on our shoulders. Let's engage our white allies, the Evelyn Murphys, the Mary Jo Meisners, the Michael Benezeras, the Chris Wayland, the president of NBC 10. Let's get them on board so that we can work collaboratively together. Many hands make work light.
I just want to add one quick thing to what Colette said,
Sure.
because I was going back and forth with Jamie in the chat and she asked me to speak up. So Colette and I worked closely with Anthony from 50 Kitchen when he was going through some hard times. He catered the Taste of Ethnic Boston event for Get Konnected. 4 or 5 months prior to COVID, politicians showed up at his doorstep and they cut ribbons in front of his doorstep and smiled and said, thank you for coming to the neighborhood. Welcome to Dorchester. But when it mattered most, they weren't there. The city of Boston was not there. The grant funding was not there. And ultimately, like if we're talking about policies and government, I've worked in government for 15 years. Like we have to hold our leaders accountable and we have to ask them to be there when it counts. No more commercials, no more, sound bites, no more leaflets. You got to be there. And it's a real shame to see that he had to close his doors. I'm sorry to hear that, but I figured I'd just chime in.
No, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think it was an important part of the conversation. I'm going to see if I can answer one question from the chat without actually unmuting microphones. This is going to be an experiment, so I don't know if it will work. This question is for Jada, Herbie, Nia, and Colette, because you're business owners. What this person is asking is, on a scale of 1 to 10, what number do you give Boston for being an equitable city for Black-owned businesses? So use your fingers to answer this question on a scale of 0 to 10. And I'm sorry, 1 to 10, and 10 is the highest in the scale. So what's your answer on that question? Boston's rating for being an equitable city for Black-owned businesses. Okay, so I think the average is 4.5. Based on what we just saw there. So plenty of room for improvement, obviously, but I hope the person who asked that question doesn't mind us answering it in a novel way. Let's see if we can get to another one here before we run out of time. Here we go. This is an interesting question. So as leaders of organizations, how do you facilitate mental wellness action steps to counterbalance the challenges you or your employees face on a daily basis? Does anyone have an anecdote or an answer that they can contribute on that question?
Glenn, I can answer that. I think this is very interesting because we do have a lot of people in my security company that's making, you know, $16, also $17 an hour. You know, again, in this time, it's really not a lot of money at all for people to take care of the family. And I think number one of the things we've been doing a lot within our organization is really put people at the center of every decision that we make. We believe that at the end of the day, these people represent our organization. We cannot be successful without them. So I always feel that we have to take care of people. We have to make sure we have a say in our company where we say people's first. So we really truly believe in that, to put people at the center of what we do and how we treat people. The other thing also I think is it's important to treat everybody as an individual, in the sense that everybody's going through different things during this pandemic. Some people are fine, some people are okay, some people that look fine may not be okay, may not be fine. So I think it's important for us as leaders to pay attention to each individual person and see them who they are, and then do whatever it takes to make accommodation when possible. Because I think, you know, especially as someone who believes in a capitalist system, I think that the old way of thinking of capitalism as I'm just gonna make the most that I can, I don't care who I hurt, this is gone. You know, the best way to do that is in a way that we put people at the center. And if when you do that, you will be around as a business for a long time, because people is going to take care of you when you need them the most, which is what important.
All right, thank you very much, Herbie. Colette, I think that's maybe a good place to end, where we have one of our Black business owners really talking about the staff that put in the work every single day. So although these are great, successful business people, I know that they don't do it alone. So looking after the people who help you fulfill your mission is so important. So that's it for me. My name is Glenn Jones from NBC 10 Boston. I hope when you turn on the television, you think about watching us for your local news. I certainly enjoy covering stories in this community and hope to do it for a long time into the future. So it's my pleasure to moderate this Get Connected forum, from adversity to opportunity, how Black businesses pivoted and thrived during the pandemic. Our thanks to the sponsors, of course, BECMA, PNC Bank, NBC 10, where I have to go to work after this, and NECN as well. Colette, it was my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Glenn. You were great. And I want to give a shout out to my team. I want to thank Ryan Littner, who is the guy behind the scenes, pulling all the strings. I want to thank Mary Helen Gillespie, our marketing consultant. I want to also give a shout out to our interns, Danielle Delaney and Maggie Carr, and just to thank all of you for being here, giving up an hour of your time to share your wisdom, your insight, and we will continue to do more. I feel that it's important in May, June, we are going to be doing a CEO mentoring program where we're going to invite white CEOs and Black and Brown and BIPOC CEOs to really spend time doing a speed mentoring for entrepreneurs and professionals of color. So look for your email. We will continue to work with NBC 10 and BECMA and CVB and Nia and her team and PNC and Black-owned Boss. And please, if you know anybody seeking funding for a great venture, please go to the GK Fund, which is now receiving and accepting applications. Glenn, I cannot thank you and NBC 10 enough, and Comcast. You guys are amazing. And I hope you win some kind of an award for the layman's work. You walk the talk when it comes to inclusion. And we are going to see more and more of some of the small businesses that are in BECMA, the GK Fund, and the GK Market on NBC 10. They're going to be highlighting these companies over the next several months as part of All Inclusive Boston. So,
and Colette, my colleague Latoya would really be angry with me if I didn't mention that she has a special running tonight on NBC 10 at 7:30 about equity in Black businesses. And I'm sure some of the people on this panel were part of that, special that she has produced. So look out for that tonight as well.
fabulous. Thank you so much. And everyone have a great afternoon.
Take care.